Welcome to the Future of Structures podcast, where we talk to the experts who are evolving our buildings for tomorrow. And here is your host, Adam Jones.
Today we are speaking with Tom Smith. He is a Global Director of Property at WSP. In the conversation, we talk about what it means to create extraordinary places rather than just iconic buildings. We go through the challenges all our cities face from a global perspective and also technology. So what technology has the most potential and I guess the impacts of automation. And we cover a lot of ground in this interview. I really enjoyed speaking to him. There's a little bit of a technical issue in the middle in terms of the audio as I was calling from Melbourne all the way to London. But stick through it, there's an absolute gold content in there, and I hope you guys learn as much as I did speaking to Tom Smith.
Well, my name is Tom Smith. I've been in the industry for 30 years. I graduated with a mechanical engineering degree, and I also gained a qualification in management. I had an MBA. I actually joined WSP in 1994. At that time, WSP was a small building services firm of around about 200 people. But even in those early 90s, it had an aspiration to be a global practice offering a full range of engineering and project management services. In that time, I've looked after the UK's buildings practice for a number of years. I was also responsible for our Middle East and India operation, and 6 have been much more involved in the global collaboration and connectivity around projects, market sectors and clients. My current role is I'm the Global Director for our Property and Buildings practice, which is circa 11,000 people, with a global revenue of about 1.5 billion. So it probably represents about a third of the overall WSP business. I'm a member of our global leadership team, and very exciting times as WSP continues to grow and work on the most complex and challenging projects around.
Yep. So you mentioned in 1994 it wasn't such a big firm. I think there's about 40,000 people in the organisation or something at the moment. How many people were part of the company around about to 1994 when you started?
In 1994 there was actually about 200 people, mainly building service engineers, and I think we'd grown through a mixture of a few acquisitions in regional cities in the UK, but a lot of organic growth. And really, around about 94, WSP embarked on a journey to become a true multidisciplinary firm, and that's how we got into structures, civils, environmental, and then different locations around the world. And I've been very fortunate to be part of that story and be involved in many of those activities.
Yeah. So we're in. So WSP are in a few countries. You mentioned. So I think it's in Dubai, China, Europe, Australia, USA. So what I guess does a day-to-day look like, the role look like for you day-to-day with so many problems or so many opportunities all around the world?
I suppose you could probably categorise my role into 5 distinct areas. The first is around our profile, I suppose. In the buildings practice, we have thousands and thousands of projects, hundreds and hundreds of clients. We tend to be much more private sector than public sector. Therefore, those clients demand a very sort of proactive response. We have to be quite agile. Very important to develop very strong relationships. Many of our clients are interested not just in our capabilities, but in terms of the people that are working on their projects. So that creates a very distinct personality, identity. So I'm very much involved in making sure we maintain that identity, that profile, and our reputation. The second area is all around collaboration. So I'm linking up different technical skills, looking at market sectors from a global perspective, many of the same clients in different parts of the world, and how we link up those clients and the people that work for those clients.
Yep.
So that collaboration is really important, and ultimately, a real part of our sort of competitive advantage is actually how we're able to sort of capitalize and leverage on all those different skills from around the world and deliver it to our clients, whether they're local clients, regional clients, or global clients. The third area is around clients. A big part of what I do is building relationships with clients, spending time with clients, looking at their projects. Quite often the focus is more on some of our global clients, whether they be global architects, developers, contractors, and end users. But actually, whenever I visit a different office, spend a lot of time with our indigenous clients there. The fourth area is all about growth. So looking at actually how we organically grow the business. This year so far we're about 7% organic growth, and that's very much linked to the previous two things I talked about around collaboration and also clients. And really the fifth area is actually, I'm not embarrassed to say, how we make maybe a little bit more money. And that's very much around work sharing, looking for opportunities where we can improve the utilization by sharing work across different businesses, how we actually really leverage our complementary resource centers in Bucharest, Romania, Manila, Philippines, and Noida in India. And a third area is around the global experts. Quite often, there isn't a project where we don't have an expertise in or a particular skill set, and being able to make sure that we engage that particular expertise and put them on that job means that we're not inventing the wheel. We're learning from previous projects very quickly, and that can obviously very much improve the efficiency and effectiveness of our design solutions. And really the fourth area is around everything that's going on in terms of automation and digitization of our design process. So how we're using BIM, how we're using data management to actually improve our processes.
Yeah, cool. So I guess we're going to dig a bit deeper into a few of those things. But at the high level, what are some of the things that the big clients in the world are actually looking for at the moment from engineering firms?
That's a very good question, Adam. I think if we first of all look at what I call the classic global client, whether they be technology clients like Google, Salesforce, Amazon, or whether they be financial clients like Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, HSBC, whether they be industrial type clients like Siemens, Novartis, GlaxoSmithKline. I think all those big global clients are looking for fewer and fewer partners who can provide the full range of engineering and project management services, and also be able to work in parts of the world.
Yeah.
And that to provide that service to those clients is very, very important. What we can't say to these clients is we'd like to be your global partner, but we only work in A, B, and C. We need to be able to offer a much wider portfolio of geographical presence and services. So I think that's a really important driver from what I'd call global clients. And then I think many sort of developer or contractor clients seeing is that the projects in increasingly more complex. The amount of billion-dollar projects that we're currently working on is, very impressive, and those projects require a much broader range of skills and services than more medium, smaller projects. So I think clients are looking for, where have we done those projects before? Where have we got global expertise? How to leverage that global expertise into the project? How do we project manage our design mandates, or in the sense where we've got to do project management, how we project manage the mandate, dealing with different stakeholders, dealing with different consultants, and that's all about capacity and concept. I think it's quite rare for any one office or any one region to have the full access to all the skills that are needed to deliver some of these projects.
Yeah, wow. And you mentioned in there there's billion-dollar projects, which is like, I guess, a baffling number when I think about it. But I guess there's with that a huge responsibility as well. So, for people to, I guess, in the past create just a building or a project, but right now into creating some extraordinary places in the future. So can you just tell us a little bit about what some of the projects or what engineers are trying to create today, or they, I guess, should be trying to create, you think, moving forward?
Most of the world are undergoing a huge transformation driven by urbanisation, infrastructure investment, particularly around transit, and of course the international money flows that are entering cities. And the scale of densification and city growth is really ambitious wherever you go. So no doubt that humanity is moving inextricably to cities. And for some people that's really good. For others it's not so good. But in all my recent travels to, I recently been to Hamburg, Pretoria, San Francisco, Montreal, Ottawa. The main topic of discussion with planners, developers and architects is actually how we go about city densification. So there's much more of an interest in how we regenerate parts of the city, how we activate run-down areas of the city, how we connect different parts of the city together. And it's those issues that actually create places, and extraordinary places are made up of many different buildings, which I often call vertical infrastructure, and also the horizontal infrastructure aspects of it. So it's that bringing together of not just building engineering skill sets, but transport, utilities, energy, power, sustainability, linking all that together into a much more holistic solution, which is very much around districts, communities, great urban realm.
Yep, cool. And is there any cities around the world, because I guess you've been able to travel a lot and see a lot of cities, are there any cities that have actually just got it completely right with some of these things you were just talking about?
I don't think there's any city that's got it completely right. I think when you visit cities, there's great examples that other cities can learn from. So, for instance, recently I was in New York, and one of the largest real estate regeneration projects probably in the world is Hudson Yards, a part of the city that was just, I suppose you could say, run down. It used to be a sort of depot almost for all of the trains. What we've done is, we've worked with the New York City to develop a way of financing the real estate investment. The developer has built a deck over the rail yards and the railways, and then there's a number of significant buildings, residential, offices, public realm, retail, that have been built on that deck, and we're involved in many of those projects, as well as being involved in the original financing solution. So that's a great example, and also to act as a catalyst for that. One of the important things was actually the transit link. So we were involved in the subway extension to Hudson Yards. So we were the program manager for that project. So that's a really great example of a regeneration of part of the city, where WSP have been involved in sort of the advisory side of it, where we've been involved in the building engineering associated with some very iconic buildings. We've been involved in the transportation investment to connect it to the rest of New York. And when you add all those things together, we're creating an extraordinary place, not individual buildings. So that would be a great example. I think close to home, last year and earlier this year, I've been to Brisbane, and I went to see the work we're doing at Queen's Wharf, and that's going to be another super example of regeneration of I suppose, not so much a rundown area of Brisbane, but a part of Brisbane that needs reactivating, and to reactivate all of the River Brisbane waterfront. And that's going to create a magnificent new place. So they're two very good examples. If I come to London, there's a lot of projects going on in London. Earls Court, where we're doing all of the transportation work. There's parts of Oldgate in East London, adjacent Liverpool Street, which is being regenerated. So I think there's very good examples in different cities.
Yep.
As opposed to. Sorry.
Oh, yeah, I was just going to ask. So, I guess with all these new challenges and projects of that size, I guess people are going to be cross-disciplinary and collaborate. Is there any issues with the mindsets of people maybe in the past being specialised in one area and making them moving into a more collaborative kind of mindset toward design?
Yes, I mean, I think if I take a tall building, for instance, yes, okay, you might think that our engineers are very interested in clearly the engineering aspects of a tall building, but and that's absolutely important in terms of the efficiency of the building, the buildability of it, but actually those tall buildings act as a catalyst for sort of lower rise development adjacent to the tall building. They act as a catalyst for public realm in at the interface of where the building interacts with the ground. They provide a catalyst for connecting to different parts of the city. So we're sort of seeing our engineers being much more aware of the context of that tall building within the city and its impact and its influence in the surrounding areas, particularly around transportation, around sustainability, and around superb public realm, which is very important for a city to thrive. Because you've got to remember, cities compete with one another. They're competing one another for talent, the best talent that's available. And that means, not just, transportation, but it's about the best social infrastructure. It's about the best amenities. It's about creating excitement within the cities. And a lot of that is driven through public realm, through parks, through plazas, through squares that allow people to interact and walk between different parts of the city. And in a way, that's what makes a city competitive in terms of attracting the very best talent.
Yeah, cool. And I guess you touched on sustainability there, and it's pretty well known now. The buildings are accounting for a lot of the world's emissions at the moment. Do you think there is hope for buildings to get down to, zero emissions or become fully sustainable in the next few decades?
I think that's very much going to be the case. If I mentioned at the start of this interview, I've been in the industry 30 years, and I just think of how building performance, should we say, has moved in 30 years. But I think what we're seeing now is that the new, I suppose, sustainable technologies that are available, they're very competitively priced now, through the quantities that are being produced. So I think we're going to see more and more buildings have these sustainable technologies put in them. I think smart grids is going to be something really interesting. I can see a sort of like Uber approach to buying and selling electricity. And we're going to have lots more smart grids, which means we're going to be much more efficient in terms of the demand side of how we use that energy. So if one building doesn't need energy and the building next door needs energy, it's just diverted accordingly. So I think with those sustainable building technologies becoming more popular and more available, I think with smart grids, and also I think that connecting autonomous vehicles is going to have a big impact as well, because I think if we look 10 years ahead and we see our towns and our cities with connected autonomous vehicles, you're going to remove a huge amount of the pollution that we see in our cities. The minute we do that, we're going to be able to maybe open up our windows, and one of the reasons we seal buildings is particularly in cities is because of pollution, but in many temperate climates we're going to be able to have more natural ventilation at different times of the year, and I think that's going to help sort of make our buildings more sustainable. And then of course I think the final thing that's happening is this whole thing around big data and data analytics. And what we're going to see is just buildings becoming much more intuitive, their various systems being much more integrated and responding to users, responding to the outside climate, which again is going to greatly improve the efficiency, the performance, and the life cycle of those buildings. So it's probably a long way of going around to answer your question. That I do see buildings, probably in the next 10 years, but certainly within 20 years, to be effectively zero emissions.
Yeah, cool. And do you? I guess you speak to the public realm and also the private. Is there much of a push in public and the governments or private? Is there much of a push in either of those two sides towards sustainability at the moment? Or is there also the financial incentive, you think?
On all the projects we're working in, or all the deals we're having with both public and private sector, it's very much top of the agenda. I think one of the challenges is actually how you build it into an economic model. But I think the new technologies I've just described and the whole thing around data analytics is making it more possible or easier to do. I think the other thing we've also got to think about is a sort of different type of drive of the millennials. I think we're seeing millennials much more aware of issues surrounding climate change. They want to work for companies that have a very strong ethos around their environmental credentials, around sustainability, and I think that's also beginning to drive the markets, both from a private sector perspective, but also driving planners and politicians in our cities to create cities that are more environmentally friendly, more sustainable, able to address some of the challenges of climate change, not just for longevity, but also to address what the population wants, and that population is changing all the time as more and more millennials come into the workplace and drive the economy.
Yeah, cool. And you've mentioned a lot of technologies that are coming in the future. What do you think has the most chance of having an influential impact in the buildings industry, or I guess disrupt the whole industry going forward, do you think?
I suppose I actually think that connected autonomous vehicles will have a massive impact. If you just think of how they change our towns and cities and precincts, what do we do with all the multi-story car parks or the at-grade car parks that we have if they're no longer needed? That's a massive opportunity to redevelop, to create more social amenity, to create more housing in the middle of our towns and cities. Okay, you're going to be able to do away with roadside parking. Okay, so suddenly our roads and pavements become more integrated. They become sort of like avenues or thoroughfares. Okay, and we're going to see shared zones with pedestrians, cyclists, and connected autonomous vehicles. We're going to see more and more deliveries to shops and businesses being done at night time. So we're going to see lots. We're not going to see the vans and lorries in our towns and roads. So I think that is going to have a massive impact in actually how our cities are regenerated or reactivated, how we look at density. So I'll probably say that's the most important thing that I see. It's a massive opportunity for our industry and for the economy at large.
Yeah. And do you think one thing we haven't really touched on yet is automation and artificial intelligence, which seems to be impacting maybe some other industries? Do you think it's going to come into the buildings industry and I guess challenge people for their jobs at the moment in the next few decades?
Yes. I'll give a couple of statistics. Global construction industry in 2014 was around about $7 trillion US, and I think by 2030 it's predicted to become $16 trillion. Anyway, the growth per year is around about 4%, which is a full 1% more than GDP. And of course, you need the growth construction to drive GDP. And a couple of the challenges for that rate of growth, both in the developed world and the emerging economies, is one, how do we finance all of that? And I think we're going to see an increase in private sector investment. But the second thing is actually how we do it more efficiently, because there's just not the skills available. And a big driver to that will be technology, and whether that's through 3D printing for housing, whether that's the whole of the construction supply chain working on a single 560 BIM model. So actually you're doing away with all the wastage that goes in information management and moving from one software platform to another software platform, and the collaboration. So that is dramatically going to change our industry. But what I think it will do is at the same time it will create opportunities, because there's still it will create different types of opportunities. So I could see our business moving more into data analytics, how we look at all the data within buildings, within the city, and actually improve amenity, improve service offering, improve the performance of buildings. I can see us getting more involved in developing some of this software, okay, in terms of research and development. So I think, if you think about it, it's just part of evolution. When I started the industry 30 years ago, I was on a drawing board, and then when CAD came along, everyone said, "Oh, it's going to take away jobs," but it didn't. And then we talked about BIM. BIM would take away jobs, but it doesn't. I think what happens is other opportunities are created. But what I think is important is that we embrace automation, digitization, and ensure that when those new disruptive technologies come along, we're ready for them. Interesting, Adam. I read an article once that said there's three things that can't be automated. One is love, and we're not in the love game. The second is creativity, and a lot of what we do is around creativity. If you think of all of the concept designs, the schematic designs, whether that be around bridges or airports or railway stations or hospitals or schools or high-rise buildings, museums, that is very much part of what we do, that creativity, working with architects, working with developers, working with planners to come up with, great placemaking and great buildings. And the third area is trust. And we're very much in the trust game. We're a trusted advisor in many of the designs we offer, but increasingly, in terms of the project management we do, or the PMO type work or program management work we do, we are a trust advisor. And I can see us getting more and more involved in being part of our clients' extended enterprises, to be their trusted advisor, to help them deliver their projects. So if you look at it that way, automation is never going to replace creativity and trust, and they're two areas that we are very much in the mix, and that's what we provide our clients and our partners, that creativity and that trust. So I feel that the future, despite all the challenges around digitization, we're still going to be in a very good footing to service our clients.
Cool. Yeah, I guess that's a very optimistic way of looking at the future, which is getting me excited. Just switching gears a little bit. Is there any advice you have for people who are working at the moment, who I guess want to, maybe have a positive influence on the buildings industry, and perhaps if they're just starting their career, is there any advice you might be able to give to them?
I think when I first started the industry, I was very much in a silo around mechanical engineering, and I think architecture, mechanical engineering, electrical engineering, structural engineering, civil engineering, they all sort of operated within sort of silos. And as my career has developed, I've had a thirst for understanding more about the building and construction process, and over the last 5-6 years that's extended into placemaking, districts, communities, cities themselves. So I think one of the most important things for anyone starting their career is try not to be pigeonholed into a particular discipline or skills. Try to develop a real empathy and understanding of buildings and places and cities, and actually how buildings interact with each other to create places, how places interact with each other to create connected cities, how people interact with public realm. I think understanding that and having that sort of empathy makes us all better designers and project managers. So that's probably the one bit of advice. And I think that's very much a topic that we've been talking about here today, Adam, is actually, how we shift the mindset from engineers, not just thinking about engineering, but actually thinking about, placemaking and communities and cities. and actually how we make them more attractive, how we make them more competitive.
Yeah, awesome. All right, well, that's a terrific way to end the interview. So thank you so much, Tom, for your time, and and all the best.
Thank you, Adam. It's been an absolute pleasure to spend some time with you.
Hey guys, Adam here. Just before you go, just one quick request. If you're enjoying the show, please leave a review. It helps our rating and ranking on iTunes, so more people can hear from the people who are making our cities better places for our future.